Hi, everybody. Terry Brown at All Bass No Bull. And today this is one of the fun ones for me, is that I got Dave Rush on with me here. And in just a minute, I'll bring him in. But, one of the things I wanted to do here was talk to the other guys who follow this sport like I do. And I'm going to have a few of them. And, the podcasters, the guys that write, some of those kind of guys, I want to have them on here. So, in the background, what the heck is going on with fishing. And it's not just guys that are fishing. It's all kinds of people. It's media people. It's all kinds of different people. David and I have known each other for a long time. David had been around with me for a long time. And back in the days with the Bass Talk Live, I was the intergalactic bass fishing wizard for a while. And I'd come on Thursdays. Kent Brown was there as well. And Dave was always there doing what he does. But Dave, welcome to the program. I'm glad to have you here. And it's been a long time coming. I'm glad we get to do that. We'll talk a little bit about Best on Tour, but I cannot start a broadcast anytime without the news that we had happen yesterday with Forward Facing. And that's a big change at Bass, of course. And I know you're right in the middle of it. You're watching it. You're seeing what's going on. I think that the verdict is still out, though. I'll give you my opinion on that. I think the verdict's still out. Which half are we going to have Forward Facing allowed on? They say that Zona and those guys are going to pick them out of a hat. I'm waiting for that to happen. Because if the Sabine River is one you can use it, I don't know why you'd want to. But anyway, what do you think about all this that's going on right now?
Well, first of all, it's great catching up with you. I appreciate you having me on the show. I've been checking it out and really enjoy what you're doing here. But yeah, man, we chose to record at a great time because we have some breaking news. Has been talked about, really throughout the whole season on what kind of changes were going to be made at Bassmaster for the Elite Series forward-facing sonar rules. We finally got a verdict on that. 5 events with forward-facing sonar, 4 events without, to be determined by a coin flip on a selection type process show with the great Mark Zona, Tommy Sanders, and Davey Height. So we still don't know all the details on exactly what events are going to be forward-facing sonar events, what events are not going to be, but an interesting concept nonetheless, and change is definitely in the air on the Bassmaster Elite Series.
Well, I think you would agree with me. I mean, when Mark started doing live a long time ago, Mark Jeffries on Bass Talk, he was really the first guy that really went out and did live coverage. You were involved in that. And that changed the world a little bit. But I talked to Shaw Grigsby a week or two ago, and what we talked about was the fact that we started with a stick, then we went to a flasher, stick going like this, sticking it in the water to see how deep it was. Then we went and got flashers. Then we had LCRs. Then we had LCDs. Then we had side imaging. Then we had down imaging. All those things happened. Not a word said. Forward-facing sonar has created its own monster, and it's such good technology that people think it's a magic pill. It's not. You used it. I use it. It's not a magic pill by any stretch of the imagination. Does it help you find a few fish you might not have seen? Yeah. Does it help you fish offshore, chase fish around? Yeah, it does. But reality says it's not. It's just another piece of technology. What are your thoughts on that?
I think, since I've been covering this sport, professionally for 15 years now, you and I were talking a little bit about that prior to jumping on here. And I've seen a lot of changes, witnessed a lot of things. The live aspect of it definitely makes it different. There has never been anything that was truly a live, view of what was going on. There have definitely been things that have come along that have changed the sport. I mean, you look at the refining of the side imaging technology. Kevin Van Dam, that was a huge part of his run that he went on there in the Bassmaster Elite Series. His prowess with the side imaging technology, the efficiency he was able to use it with, the mapping capabilities that came along. You have a lot of people that will argue even more beneficial than forward facing. I mean, take away the mapping and we're back to triangulating and doing things we used to have to do. I mean, it allows those guys to really just pull up on the most productive areas, or you or me or anybody for that matter. 360 was a big deal. So we've seen a lot of things come and go. Some of them have been more effective than others, Terry, but the live sonar has definitely been a hot button issue. And I don't think there's a question that it has affected the amount of fish, size of fish that are being caught in both professional and local tournaments. I mean, you do a quick rundown on just the math of average weights and, your answers right there, number of limits caught, so on and so forth. Bassmaster, being one of the premier organizations for professional tournaments, kind of went back and forth, with different regulations. How are we going to get in front of this? And they came up with this. I mean, last year they limited number of transducers, screen size. That was kind of step one. The fans spoke, the angler board, the anglers voted. This is what they voted to do. Was to go to a 50-50 type split. And it looks like that is what we are going to see in 2026. I think it actually opens up a lot of interesting possibilities and cool storylines personally.
Yeah, I do too. I think you're right. And those that think that forward facing sonar is a godsend are missing the boat, because it does help. There's no question. It's a really neat technology, but I don't think it's an end all. And I think that based on where they go, and that's where the rubber meets the road, is where they're going to use it and where they can't use it. And I think that'll be the telling tale. We don't use persimmon shafts on our golf clubs anymore. We don't. Everything changes technology wise. I will tell you that I don't like to watch it. I mean, it's not as fun to watch when you're looking at the back of somebody's head all day long.
Right.
I think that live television has kind of changed that. One of the things at ESPN when they bought it was they were thinking they could make this into a sport where people want to watch it. We'd get new audience, we'd get new things, and that hasn't really happened much. The audience share is similar than what it used to be. But I think a lot of people got turned off, and mainly the older guys got turned off by the fact they wanted to go in and watch fishing, and they watch some guy looking at a graph all day long. That's one negative part of it. The positive part of it is, as you said earlier, a lot more people are catching more fish. And, they're chasing fish. They're doing the things that, you never thought was possible before. And we're also finding out fish don't do what we thought they did. The patterning, saying, hey, the fish go deep. They go deep in the summer. They come in shallow in the spring, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, maybe not. And we're starting to find out some things about the fish themselves that maybe is a little bit different as well.
Yeah, I think some of the most solid feedback I've gotten from some of the Elite Series and Bass Pro Tour professionals is how much they have been able to learn with this technology about fish behavior and understanding, basically, thinking what they thought they knew they didn't know about fish, and these are the foremost experts in catching fish and fish behavior. You would think they spend the most time on the water. It's what they do for a profession, but definitely giving you a better insight on fish behavior and unlocked a whole new group of fish that people were able to target. I mean, there were times, you would catch suspended fish out deep, this, that, and the third, like you've said, even on a flasher, but the forward facing sonar has opened that group of fish up. And there was a lot of thoughts that, that would open back up the fish on the bank, the target oriented fish. It would give those guys a lot more opportunity, since a lot of guys are spending their time out chasing more nomadic pelagic fish out there. I think you've seen some of that. But definitely a hot button topic. And we're going to see. I mean, it just came out yesterday, the announcement. I've spent a little bit of time kind of perusing, some comments and stuff. I think it's about half and half. I don't think you're ever going to make anybody happy with it. I don't think this solved, if you looked at it as a problem, I don't think this was, the solution to a problem. I think it was just another evolution in the, the topic of forward facing sonar. And I think one thing that people may not be realizing or thinking about, proactively, is these organizations are trying to get ahead of the curve here. I mean, without a doubt, there is something on the way, if not already developed, that is going to come out very soon that is going to be way better than what is available now. And at what point on a professional level, do you limit that? Like, you use the persimmon shafts as an example. There are limits, on the type of technology you can use, on a golf course, the number of clubs, the modifications you can make the club to your golf clubs, so on and so forth. So I think these organizations, both of them, in their own way, are doing what they feel they need to do to get ahead of this technology curve. And, the fans are still watching. I do think, you mentioned the kind of one of the biggest catchphrases I feel like is the quote, grow the sport. I feel like that has not necessarily happened, as much as people would have thought it could have. I think, there's a finite number of fishing fans. Everybody's kind of swimming in the same pool. I do not think that forward facing sonar has made a difference one way or another as far as that's concerned. I think, you have fishing fans, they're going to watch a tournament one way or another. They may not like, maybe not be their cup of tea to watch the forward facing sonar tournaments. But if you look at the Bassmaster Elite Series in particular, 2025, the schedule itself did a good job of, in my opinion, did a good job of kind of leveling the playing field with forward facing sonar. If you go back and look at top 20 in the AOI, I've used this example prior, but you look at a guy like Bill Lowen. Lowen comes out of the box, wins the first tournament on the St. Johns River. That's not a surprise. That's a Bill Lowen type fishery. But my money would not have been on Bill Lowen to stay consistent and, finish. I believe he finished 12th or 13th in the AOY points. Now, Bill Lowen probably did catch a few fish on forward facing sonar. However, I think, in my opinion, what has happened is you're starting to see the shock and awe of the forward facing sonar phenomenon with these young anglers wear off a little bit. And what I mean by that is these guys that caught fish prior to forward facing sonar are really, really good. Let's not be confused about that. I think it got in their head a little bit when it first came out, and it got them off of their games. I think that they kind of regrouped, came back out, fished their strength, and you're starting to see that. I mean, obviously, a guy like John Cox doesn't even have it on his boat. He's always going to be hovering around contending for that angler of the year unless he just has a total off year. But got guys like Bill Lowen, Caleb Kufal. You look at a guy like Pat Schlapper, who's done a little bit of both. But I think it's wearing off a little bit, and I think you're seeing just a little bit of evening out on its own of the effectiveness of the forward-facing sonar as it pertains to the field. But 2026, it's going to be a whole different deal. I mean, depending on the coin flips, you could see all types of different scenarios. I mean, a tournament like a Gunnersville, that's going to totally change the trajectory of that tournament based on whether they're going to have forward facing sonar or not. A tournament like Santee Cooper, it may not change it that much. I mean, there's going to be guys that obviously use forward facing sonar if they can at that event. We've seen Luke Palmer win using forward facing sonar, perspective mode, catching fish off of cypress trees and, shallow water. We've seen Scott Martin, win a bed fishing tournament with perspective mode, an open at Santee Cooper. So it is definitely going to play a role, but the decision has been made. I don't think it's going to stop all the grumbling. Everybody has a voice now on social media, and they are using it. So, it's not going to solve the issue. If you think it's an issue, it's just going to change things a little bit. And I'm actually really looking forward to it.
It's funny. I think the thing that it did is most prevalent was the fact that it got the youth involved so heavily. I bet there's a lot of parents that wish it never came out with forward-facing sonar because they were buying graphs and 16-inch graphs and LV34s and all the stuff that goes along with it, the transducers, all that stuff. They probably wouldn't have done. It's still expensive as heck to be in the fishing business, no question. If you're an angler, it costs a lot of money to be an angler. It does. It's not a money making deal at the local level in particular. But I think the youth movement, we're seeing it loud and clear. The Trey McKinneys, those guys, and Dustin Cannell, all those guys are really, really good at it. Jacob Wheeler. When you look at it, those guys embraced it. They knew they had the opportunity to use it. They got involved with it. I remember it wasn't that long ago, Dave. You probably remember this as well. Everybody had a sponsor. It was Humminbird, it was Lowrance, it was Garmin, it was whoever, Raymarine. And what ended up happening was these guys said, wait a minute, each one of these technologies have a little bit of something better. I'm going to buy my own electronics and I'm going to have one of each on my boat. And that's when they went to the screen size and the transducers and all the other stuff that goes involved with it. I've heard arguments about using talons, or power poles. That's a negative. All the things that just gives us something to talk about in the media, but it also gives the people who follow the sport as religiously as a lot of people do now, it gives them something to talk about. Social media, as you mentioned, is a key ingredient to all that. If you can be on social media, given your perspective, which a lot of people are doing, podcasts and otherwise, I think it gives them a lot of talking points. But I'm excited about it too. I'm excited to see what the changes will be. NPFL went to none. You look at MLF, they went to half and half. You could use it certain days, couldn't use it other days. This is a little bit different. I think it's going to be a little bit better. I think it's a testament to the guys that get abused a lot on social media, the Bass hierarchy, that they did something. And I think if they had just set status quo, they probably would have got beaten up even worse than what they had. But I think this is a good thing, the way they did it, the way they voted, all the things that went into it. I think it's a really good process. And I hate to see some of the guys fall off the edge of the paper, but that's going to happen in any sport. And I think that we're going to see a little bit more of that. The names that we've always had around may not be around. So, we're gonna keep seeing the change to our sport, which is absolutely, in my opinion, great. I am one of those guys that believe change is important, and I think sometimes it's maligned a little bit. Change for the sake of change is not necessarily good, but I think you would agree that we've had some really good changes too. I mean, think about it. Our technology with hooks, our technology with baits, our technology with all that stuff was the result of change. So I think the change is really, really good.
I agree with you, and I think that you mentioned the three organizations there: NPFL, Major League Fishing, BPT, and the Tackle Warehouse tour there, and the Bassmaster Elite Series, Bassmaster Opens. I mean, there's something for everybody now. If you don't want to watch forward-facing sonar, that's not your gig. Head on over to the NPFL. Those guys are doing a great job in growing that organization, and it is strictly no forward-facing sonar, just kind of old school. Get out there, find them, catch them, that type of deal. You have a hybrid format on the BPT with the periods. You have a daily change hybrid format on the Tackle Warehouse Pro Circuit. You have the 5 on, 4 off, or vice versa there for the Bassmaster Elite Series in 2026. Not announced what they're going to do with the Bassmaster Opens, but they've expanded the live coverage of that, where you can sit at your TV on FS1 on Saturday morning and check that out and watch a live Bassmaster Open. I mean, like you said, whoever thought that would have happened? That's a good development in the sport, in my opinion. But there's something for everybody. I think that, you're never going to make everybody happy as far as that goes. And it will be interesting. We do a lot of stats comparisons on Best on Tour. It's one of the things we really delve into. And I think it'll be very interesting to do some comparisons, 2025 versus 2026 weights, cut weight, things of that nature, moving forward with the new restrictions on forward-facing sonar.
Well, of course, you remember NPFL, everybody said we don't need another tour. Guess what? We did need another tour, and it's working out well, and they're getting guys that didn't get any coverage or any ability to be able to show their group, how they did it, what they did, how they do it, whatever. And I think the NPFL's done that, and I think you're right. I think they're growing it. It's going to be someplace where people can go if they don't want to use that. And I think I honor the fact that those guys have done what they've done. So yeah, did we need the NPFL? No, there was all kinds of arguing, back and forth, social media. That's just a big, it's just going to be a weekend series thing. The next thing, I mentioned this 15 years ago, and everybody thought I was an idiot, and they probably still think I'm an idiot, but they didn't think I'm an idiot about this. A Legends deal, where you actually have old time guys getting together maybe 3 times a year and having a tournament. I think that's going to happen. I'm glad to see it's going to happen. It brings back the names. It brings back the people that we grew up following. And I think that's going to happen. Believe it or not, they wouldn't be floating this balloon if they didn't think they were going to do it. Okay. And every podcast I see with a bass guy on it, what do you think about a Legends tour, or what do they call it, senior tour? What do you think about that? Well, they wouldn't be floating that balloon if they didn't think they had an opportunity to do that. I'm all in favor of that. Matter of fact, I love it.
Yeah,
Those are the guys that I started with.
I remember, being privy to several conversations, both on and off the air, between you and Mark Jeffries, talking about senior tour options. Mark was big into bowling and would always use that comparison of the senior PBA tour. That's been an idea that's been around for quite some time. There's been, some smaller renditions of it. I think, Bass Pro Shop, Johnny Morris has put on a few little kind of one-off deals where a legend, of the sport fished with a current angler, they're on Table Rock, things like that. I mean, PGA has it, PBA has it. There's no reason, maybe not a huge schedule. I think, maybe a 4-tournament deal, something like that in the fall or something, early spring, depending on, whatever those guys' schedules. Because let's be clear, just because these guys, aren't fishing as much professionally anymore, their schedules are very packed.
You bet. We did a deal at Wire to Fish. It was called the Wire to Fish World Championship. I put it on, right?
Right.
And I invited like 15 guys. We got little bitty John boats. We got all this stuff going on. And we went out and fished a couple local lakes. And that thing was a hoot. That was the most fun I'd ever had. We got a bunch of local guys with a pro, and we went out and they competed as a team. One of the best things we ever did, and it was at the local level. I've always believed that small lakes are underutilized. Okay. And where, you can't have 200 boats on Evergreen Lake with it's 1,000 acres. Can't do it. But you can do something like that. And I think that's where this senior tour comes in. Maybe you go to a body of water nobody's fished before. Maybe you go to a body of water where there's a good community by it that's a big supportive community that would say, man, I want to go see, some of these older guys that fish and get to meet them and get autographs and do that kind of stuff. I'm a collector. If you can see my office, I am. I'm a collector of memorabilia. And, the only thing I collect is stuff that somebody I followed gave me. Okay. I don't go out and buy things. I don't do any of that stuff, but I've got a room, and actually 3 or 4 rooms full in my office here of just things that guys gave me. Kevin Van Dam spinner baits, all the kind of stuff that, went along with the following this sport, as long as I have 35 years plus of following this sport. And I think that there's still a lot of those people out there that want to see those guys, that want to see what they're doing. I talk to Denny Brower a lot. And not as much as I'd like to, but I talk to him quite a bit. He's fishing every bit as much as he used to. He's just fishing at home. But anyway, we need to take a quick break here. We'll do that. Then we're going to come back. We're going to talk about Best on Tour. We're going to talk about what you're doing, all the things you're doing with OBT and some of the other things you got going on. We'll be right back after this.
Serious gear for serious anglers. DD26 delivers tournament-tough performance you can trust. From the front to back of your boat, DD26 has you covered. DD26. No shortcuts, just badass American-made gear.
And we're back with All Bass No Bull. And one of the things we've always tried to be here is very positive about our sport. David, I know you guys are that way. I know Panger's that way. I know Mark's that way. I'm going to have Kumar on here. We got to talk about what he thinks and stuff. Jay and I started, Bass Fan. Well, actually, Jay started it, and I was able to tag along with him on a great idea. He changed the scenery about how you covered fishing. He became the USA Today of bass fishing. We're starting to see, I think we're inundated with podcasts. I think we're inundated with all kinds of different stuff. But you've got a thing now that you're doing called Best on Tour. Tell me a little bit about what that's about.
So Best on Tour was kind of the product of conversations. I know, in the industry, you probably have the same thing. You talk to your buddies, you talk to guys in the industry, and you have these conversations kind of off the air. And a lot of them are very interesting, and they're not things that shouldn't be talked about in public. They're just things that weren't talked about in public or structured where the general consumer could check them out. So Best on Tour is a newsletter, comes out every Thursday, once a week. It's free to subscribe to. It was really the product, honestly, of just trying to come up with a platform where we could get information out about brands that we were working with and give other brands in the industry an opportunity and a place to get the word out about their products things that were going on and so forth. Because you mentioned Bass Fan. I mean, for the longest time, I mean, that was the bookmark. When I opened my laptop in the morning, I fired up the computer, went straight to Bass Fan. Bass Zone, Advanced Angler, a lot of stuff out there, Wired to Fish. I mean, there were a lot of independent websites that really gave the fishing fan and the consumer out there a different view other than just looking at the organization websites. And, with the advent of social media, the podcasting, all the YouTube videos, in my opinion, I think that fell off a little bit. I think people, really stopped looking so much at the websites and just, wanted that quick fix in my feed immediately. Let me be able to browse through something in a couple of minutes, here on my phone while I'm drinking my coffee in the morning and move on with the day. And that was kind of the advent of Best on Tour. We decided to do it in a newsletter format based on a few things. In my opinion, working in marketing, for several years here now, direct to consumer and subscriber emails is kind of the last frontier where you can be assured that your message is getting to who you want it to without having to deal with an algorithm. And, when I talk algorithms, I'm talking, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever social, even YouTube for that matter, whatever platform, you are involved with, there is an algorithm that controls how many of your followers, subscribers, whatever actually see it. If you have 50,000 followers, doesn't mean that 50,000 of your followers are actually seeing your post. It's actually a smaller percentage. So we thought the newsletter was the best vehicle to get the word out, and just came up with some categories. I mean, like we talked about earlier in the podcast, stats was always a big thing. I mean, we always talked about analytics and, kind of looked at it from that perspective. So we are really stat driven. That was also kind of a product of the marketing side of things. We did a lot of stats to use in marketing presentations for companies and clients, and thought that, hey, that's very interesting stuff, to some degree. What, a consumer, a fan would really like to see that, stats and comparisons. Numbers don't lie, right, Terry?
That's right.
So yeah, I mean, it's been very successful. I think I'm on we are almost at about 340 issues, if I'm not mistaken. So once a week, been doing that, and it's evolved. I think it's become a lot better. You start something and you kind of get some feedback on it and kind of fine tune it, but it's a really cool thing. I really enjoy doing it, and allows me to talk to people like you, stay involved in the industry. And it's really, I'm free to put whatever I want on there. I don't really, get down in the dirt and do all these, kind of gossipy things, but, it's not totally a home team newsletter where if you sponsor the newsletter, that's all that's going to be on there. I mean, we're kind of equal opportunity. Everything goes, trying to just make the industry better, with the newsletter, and give people an opportunity to get their message out there.
Before we go too far, how do you get it? What do you said it's free. How do you get it?
Super easy. You go to bestontour.net. You can subscribe there for free. Once a week, Thursdays, it comes to your inbox, 10:05 Central. Once a week there. And there's also a lot of other cool resources there on the website now. Some guides. That's been one of our bigger things, of just kind of like ultimate guides to things, like ultimate guides to, how to get sponsors, how to keep sponsors, ultimate guides to angler YouTube channels, so on and so forth. So just really trying to be very informative, give everybody some resources, whether you're just a casual angler, whether you are looking to, get involved in the sport on the fishing side or on the industry job side. A lot of resources there. So easy to subscribe to. And then of course we, have our social media channels, Best on Tour Bass on Instagram, Best on Tour on Facebook. We have a Facebook Insiders group. We just started a YouTube channel, which we're filling up with a bunch of cool stuff that we've, gotten over the years, and current stuff. So we've got a lot of stuff out there for you, and would appreciate anybody to subscribe to it. It'd be great.
Well, that's awesome. And I think that you should, because I have, and I think it's a really good avenue to get more information.
Thank you.
The thing that I think is funny is, you remember Tim Tucker, right? You remember
Absolutely.
Tim? Tim was an icon in this sport. He was probably one of the first senior riders at Bass that, gave a crap about something other than talking about Bo Dowd, an Olympic swimmer, right? He was a guy that got involved, did some stuff. He had a newsletter that was a paper newsletter,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a really good piece of work. I mean, Tim was an excellent writer, but he was also, astute in what was going on in the sport. And he was always the guy. The best thing I can tell you about Tim Tucker, I did a TV show with him, Great Angler Debate. And he was always contrary to everything else. And the reason he did that wasn't that he was necessarily contrary. It was that he was trying to start a conversation. And that was the best thing about him. And if you remember Jim Bitter losing the Classic with a little 12-inch fish, Tim Tucker was the guy. He was taking a picture of that.
That was
fish.
him. Yeah.
Was
iconic video clip there.
Absolutely great video clip. You look back at your history. I mean, you're a young guy yet. Us old guys, I always kind of consider myself the oldest guy out there, but it's fun. I mean, I have not lost my zest for anything in this space. I really haven't. I mean, I always tell people I put wheels on my chair so the day I die, they can just wheel me to the door, right? That's what I want to do. I had a business life in corporate America that really wasn't what I wanted to do. This is what I wanted to do. And how good is it? You're getting to do it at a younger age than me, but you get to do this, and it is a sport that you just absolutely have passion about and love. And I think that that's the neatest thing, whether a fan, whether you're an angler, whether you're a company, whether you're any of those things, this is a cool sport to be involved in.
It is for sure. And, I'm very fortunate to have been involved in it as long as I have, and to still have the passion for it. And I think that kind of, goes back to having the opportunity to surround yourself with good people. And I will say, most of, if not all of the people I've met through this profession are really good people, and you all share a passion for the betterment of the sport. And it is just it's a fraternity is really what it is. And everybody's typically willing to help each other out and do the right thing. And, it's easy to get, go down the rabbit hole of all this negativity over the past several years in particular. But I choose to just really keep a positive outlook about it. I mean, man, think about, we could be doing worse things. We are very fortunate to be in the position that we are in and be able to, bring news to fans of the sport, people who share a common passion, the same thing that we do.
Well, Dave, you've always got a voice here. You and I have been friends for a long time, way back when I was the intergalactic bass fishing wizard. All those days, all those things. I used to see at the ICAST shows, used to see at all the events. And you've always got a voice here if you need one. And I really appreciate you being with us here. And you go out and sign up for Best on Tour. I think you'll be very happy if you do that. And I'm going to have Dave on again. I promise I will have you back on again, because I think it's important that we keep up on the latest and greatest, not just from my perspective, but from people who are in the industry a lot deeper than me. And Dave, you're one of those guys. So thank you for being with us here at All Bass No Bull.
Well, I really appreciate you having me as a guest, and we've got plenty of things we can talk about on the next episode. We go back a long time and can unveil a lot of cool stories from yesteryear and talk about things current as well.
Thank you.